we are, what, 5-6 months now away from the 2024 election. And one of the biggest talking points of the Biden-Harris reelection effort is abortion. They are saying Republicans are going to take away the fundamental right of women, that Republicans are going to push even further than that and strip more rights away. It's also ridiculous. Just to give an example, Kamala Harris recently, our lovely vice president, was in Wisconsin at a abortion rally. And she was standing in front of this big banner that said, "Trust women," on it. Which, by the way, one of the things that irks me sometimes about this abortion conversation, and as many of you know, I'm conflicted on the subject of abortion. I wouldn't call myself a pro-life absolutist or a pro-choice absolutist. It's something that morally and certainly legally I'm very conflicted about. But one of the things that does irk me, if I may say, is the pandering to women on this. What I'd like to say to Vice President Harris and many of those on the left who are really, pushing this abortion issue, I'd like to say to them, please appeal to me on principles of why I should support a woman's right to legally terminate her pregnancy. Please don't count on my vote because I'm a woman. Please don't depend on my support for you on this situation because I'm a woman. Please appeal to my intellect and not to my genitals. But nevertheless, in her speech, Vice President Harris said, quote, "These extremists are trying to take us backward. Are they proud," she said, "that women across our nation are suffering? Are they proud that women have been robbed of a fundamental freedom? Are they proud that young women today have fewer rights than their mothers and grandmothers?" You know the deal. That is the narrative that's going on right now. Let's quickly listen to President Biden in his recent State of the Union address froth up this abortion issue again.
Many of you in this chamber and my predecessor are promising to pass a national ban on reproductive freedom. My God, what freedom else would you take away? Look, it's a decision to overturn Roe v. Wade. The Supreme Court majority wrote the following, and with all due respect, justices, women are not without electoral power. Electoral or political power. You're about to realize just how much you're right about that. Clearly.
You know, the point of this discussion today is not to make a case for or against abortion. I have done that in other episodes. I've talked about how I'm morally and legally conflicted on this subject. The point of this discussion is to show that, yes, there are certainly some people in this country who are trying to pass a national ban on abortion, who do in some ways have very extreme views on, abortion and IVF. Okay, we've seen some of that. But there is this whole narrative that Republicans and pro-lifers are these radical extremists. Before I even continue with that, being pro-life is not extreme. I think denying a woman an abortion when it's affecting her health is of course extreme, but being pro-life is not extreme. I may be conflicted about that issue, but I recognize that those who are pro-life are advocating for the dignity of a human life. I mean, that is one of the most noble positions that a person can take. Those pro-life individuals are fighting for voiceless, defenseless human beings who have not been given the opportunity that all of us have, which is the blessing of a life. So pro-lifers are not the ones I'm calling extreme. I'm calling the, people who are saying in the case of the life of the mother being threatened, no abortion, that is extreme. But let's look at Florida, because Florida has been one of the main points of discussion that the left has used, that Ron DeSantis is this, evil Handmaid's Tale-esque woman-hating figure, and Florida is going to have this big bad ban on abortion. Let's look at what was just passed and see if that accords with the narrative. So yesterday, the Florida Supreme Court held up or upheld a law that was passed in the state of Florida that banned abortion at 15 weeks. There was a challenge to that law. They said that it was violating the Florida state constitution, and the Florida Supreme Court ruled no, there is not a right to abortion enshrined in the privacy provision of Florida state's constitution. So that 15-week ban, that law, is in fact constitutional and still stands. But also, since that law, which banned abortion at 15 weeks in the state of Florida, there was a new law that was passed that is called the Heartbeat Protection Act, and it actually created a 6-week ban on abortion. And so by the Florida Supreme Court approving of or deeming it constitutional, the earlier 15-week ban, now that a new law has been passed with a 6-week ban, that new law is scheduled to go into effect in the next 30 days on May 1st. So essentially, the Supreme Court of Florida said that the 6-week ban on abortion, the new law, is going to take effect. It is constitutional. Now let's pause for a moment. A 6-week ban on abortion is very different than a national ban, is a total ban on abortion. 6 weeks is different than total. That's number one. And number two, crucially, to combat all of the lies and all of the misinformation that is spread about provisions like this, there is, in fact, a part of this 6-week ban that has exceptions for, quote, the life of the mother, rape, incest, and rare fatal fetal abnormalities. So this whole narrative that there are all of these Republicans who want to ban abortion entirely and want to have no exceptions, that is not true, at least in the state of Florida. 6-week ban and exceptions for rape, incest, life of the mother, and fetal abnormalities. So that's the first big part of this Florida ruling. The second big part, which even more dispels this, left-wing lie that Florida's this Handmaid's Tale-esque state. The second part of this is that the Supreme Court approved a ballot referendum that will go to the vote of Floridians this November. And this ballot referendum gives Floridians the option to vote for a constitutional right for abortion in the state of Florida. Can you identify something that is unreasonable, undemocratic, draconian, and evil about that? I mean, that is about as reasonable and democratic of a position as I can think of. You are leaving this issue to the states. You are allowing Floridians to vote on whether they want to enshrine a constitutional right in their state to abortion. This proposed constitutional amendment, which is called the Amendment to Limit Government Interference with Abortion, would guarantee a woman's right to abortion up to 6 months of the pregnancy. I mean, that's really generous, I'm not saying generous as a moral qualification. I'm saying generous in terms of quantity. That is a very long amount of time in that big, bad, red state of Florida to allow Floridians to vote on a constitutional amendment which would allow abortion up until 6 months. And by the way, according to John McCormick, who is a reporter for Dispatch, that constitutional amendment actually wouldn't stop at 6 months. It would, he reports, allow healthcare providers to terminate the pregnancy if they deemed that it was necessary to protect the health of the mother. And John McCormick says that term health in that constitutional amendment is not limited to physical health. It can also be mental health. So here we have again, Florida Supreme Court upholding 6-week ban on abortion. That's not a total ban, it's a 6-week ban. They have exceptions for the life of the mother, rape, and incest. And they are also allowing a ballot referendum which would enshrine a constitutional right to abortion up to 6 months, and according to John McCormick, by all intents and purposes, even further than that. You can morally disagree with it. I, in many ways, morally disagree. I mean, not in many ways. I totally morally disagree with being able to terminate the pregnancy at 9 months, unless, of course, the life of the mother is at risk. But putting any moral conversations about abortion aside, we're putting that aside for right now. This is the point. Is this the Handmaid's Tale-esque state that the left is making it out to be? It will be very interesting to see if they report on this, and if they report on this honestly, because you would read this and you would not expect Florida to have these kinds of provisions, given the kind of lies that the left constantly froths up about them. Well, MSNBC's Joy Reid, unsurprisingly, is continuing the lies. Listen to how she reacted to the Florida Supreme Court ruling today.
We're now talking about during spring break, a state where a lot of young people go to visit, to go during spring break. A lot of young people who go to college are going to wake up 30 days from now in a state that is essentially the Handmaid's Tale. And between them and a free state are about 7 other red states, including Georgia that has a 6-week ban, South Carolina that just passed a ban. You're talking about red states for as far as the eye can see and the sea behind you. So you've got nowhere to go in Florida now. That, to me, sounds like a hell of a motivator to women, to voters of color, to people who essentially tend to lean Democrat.
Do you have any idea what she's saying? People in Florida have nowhere to go? What? I'm glad you're laughing, Sean. That's what we have to do with individuals like that. We have to laugh so that we don't cry.